All right, welcome to the webinar, 5 Essential Skills to Prevent Pornography Addiction. My name is Brandon Patrick, and I am a clinical therapist, licensed clinical social worker. I specialize in treating pornography and sexual addiction. I work a lot with parents and adolescents and even children at times, and I work on prevention. And I feel it my obligation some to do prevention work and to help parents understand what to do um, to prevent pornography addiction. I see the other side of it so much, um, the consequences of the addiction and the pain and suffering that it causes. And if I can help one person, one child, one teenager not get into pornography, that really makes me happy. So that's what I hope to do today, is to provide some guidance for parents and leaders in protecting and preventing pornography addiction. First off, what I want to say is our kids don't have many assets in the world for them in terms of helping them avoid pornography and stay away from pornography and addiction. Really, the only thing they have, one of the only things they have, is their parents, to provide safety and to give them guidance. 93% of boys and 62% of girls were exposed to pornography before the age of 18. 11 million children view pornography, and 75% of them said that their parents never talked to them about internet pornography. And so there's an epidemic going on. Our kids are viewing pornography, they're seeing it, yet there's inadequate support for them in order to stay away from it. And there's a discrepancy between the problem and the solutions. And I hope that as I talk today, we start to bridge that gap a little bit, and we can get more resources out there for parents so that they know what to do and they know how they can really help their kids stay away from pornography. Teenagers use pornography. Most teenagers are using pornography. Parents lack skills and information in order to protect their teenagers from pornography use. They ultimately get caught off guard. They don't fully understand what it takes in order to help their kids overcome pornography. And then parents don't understand how powerful their influence is. At times they just get stuck in the struggle of teaching, but really their influence is very powerful. So, so there's 5 essential things that parents can do to help prevent pornography addiction. And these things I've listed in no particular order. They're all equally important. They also meld together very well. They overlap. So the first one I want to talk about is teaching emotional intelligence or emotion regulation. So addiction is really an emotional problem. People use substances, sex, video games, food, whatever, to numb out their emotions. They don't know how to cope with their emotions or deal with life in that way. Teaching our children how to deal with their emotions is essential to them avoiding addiction and not getting caught up in addiction. Children with emotional intelligence or skills emotionally, they have greater confidence, they do better in school, and they have healthier relationships. Ultimately, they have a less likelihood of falling into addiction. So how does a parent raise an emotionally intelligent child? There's certain things that we can do as parents to become emotion coaches, basically, to help our children identify and understand their emotions and to help them become aware of what they can do with their emotions. So the first thing is helping them become aware of their emotions. One thing we can do is acknowledge their emotions. We can keep our eye on the game, not on the ball. And what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. If, let's say, if my daughter came to me and she was upset, she was angry, and she was frustrated that her friend wouldn't play with her, and she started yelling and screaming and acting very poorly. Now, the game in that moment, well, the ball in that moment would be me focusing on her behaviors. It would be me punishing her for not acting in an appropriate way, and getting caught up in an argument with her because her emotions are heightened. Um, the game would be, what I could do is acknowledge and accept that she has emotions first. I could say, her name's Sandy. I could say, Sandy, I can tell that you're really angry or upset. Or are you sad, or do you feel rejected? What are you feeling right now? And just reflecting back and acknowledging that there's emotions there, will help her to hopefully gain control of her brain to stop, to say, yes, this is what I'm feeling. And then reflecting back to her what I see is really helpful for her to gain awareness of her emotions. The next thing we can do as parents is to connect with our children in an emotional state. When they are emotional, oftentimes kids get punished when they're emotional. Oftentimes adults get punished when they're emotional. But every emotion is valid. Your children's emotions are very valid because they're real to them. It's what they're feeling. And they need validation in those emotions. You may not agree with what they're doing about the emotion, but you can still validate their emotion. So practice empathizing with them and learn how to truly empathize with them. What empathy is feeling that emotion with them, right? So the other day, my daughter came in the house and she was screaming and crying, and she was clearly upset. And I didn't know why. And I asked her, and my daughter's 6, and she said, Jane hit me. And she was crying and screaming. Well, Jane she just barely turned 2, and my daughter's 6. And first thing I did was judge my daughter. I thought, are you kidding me? Like, really? You're that emotional about that? And then I basically told her to get over it. So I really failed at this. My daughter came in, she was sad, she was upset, she was a little bit angry, and all of those emotions are very valid. I could have first heard them before I went on to correct or teach or help her understand, how to regulate those emotions. First and foremost, I needed to empathize with her. In order to do that, I have to have the ability to regulate my own emotions. If she's upset and it makes me upset that she's upset, I'm not going to reflect back her emotions. I'm not going to empathize with her. So I need to regulate my own emotions, understand that they're coming up for me, and then be there for her and empathize with her. This empathy and this connection, it's so vital to preventing pornography addiction. It does 2 very important things. One, it creates safety. Your child will feel connected to you. They'll feel like, hey, when I'm me, when I have these emotions, I can have them in front of mom or dad. I can say them, I can express them, I can be real, which means that they feel safe. The other thing that it teaches is that it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel emotions. You don't have to numb them out, but sit in them, feel them, understand them. And so, very important to preventing pornography addiction. The next thing we can do is and this goes right along with effective communication, but it's also really important with emotion regulation, to listen, reflect, and validate. I think as parents, we get so eager to correct, to teach, and to mentor. And if our child is opening up to us, then we want to take that opportunity to let them open up. And so take a step back and just listen, and like I said, pay attention to the game. Listen for those underlying emotions as to what your child is saying. So you might be hearing their words, but also pay attention to their emotions as well. And then reflect those back and validate those emotions for them. And lastly, with emotion regulation, is to find solutions. Reflect back the emotions, identify them for your children, teach them what they are. Oh, I see that your face is turning bright red. It looks like you're angry. Or you have a clenched fist and you're punching the wall. I think that's some anger. Or I can tell that you're reluctant to go do that and you're shaking. Maybe you're scared. You're fearful. So name it. The second thing is the teaching part, is to provide some solutions and do it in a way that it's teaching and helping them figure it out for them. We all cope with our emotions in different ways. And so, you can do things like, gosh, I can see that you're kind of sitting around and you look bored. Maybe you could go for a run, or, why don't you go do some service for the neighbor, or go play some basketball. You give them ideas, things that they can do to cope with that boredom. I can tell that you're stressed or overwhelmed. What really helps me when I get overwhelmed? To make lists and to organize what I need to get done. So maybe you should sit down and write it out. Um, that's good for them. Teaches them, oh, I have options. I don't have to just get stuck in my emotions, but I can work through them. So some things I have listed here on the slide is physical activity, encouraging them to talk it out or vent, journaling, artwork, hobbies, doing something creative, and then being assertive in organizing themselves and their time to deal with their emotions. Okay, the next essential to preventing pornography addiction is open, honest, and effective communication with your children. This is an ongoing dialogue. So Patricia Greenfield said, a warm and communicative parent-child relationship is the most important factor in reducing porn use among children. It's true. A mentor, a support person, a parent who has an open relationship with a child is probably the best, most important asset that a child can have in avoiding pornography addiction. So addiction is an attachment disorder. Someone with an addiction has a very difficult time with intimacy, with healthy connection, with meaningful relationships in their life. So if you can help create a meaningful relationship with your child, it lessens the chance of addiction. Loneliness, there's research studies out there that say that loneliness is one of the biggest triggers, and someone who's lonely has a much more higher chance of relapse than somebody who is not. So I've broken down communication into 5 skills that I think are really important for parents to have with their children, especially when it pertains to pornography addiction. One is to be a good listener, like I talked about earlier, to listen non-judgmentally, and don't fix the problem, but just to listen. The second one is to hold true to your boundaries and respect their boundaries. You want to teach them to stand up for their truths and for themselves, to maintain their self-respect, to be assertive in speaking those boundaries and be honest with who they are. So you want to do that yourself. Some examples would be, let's say you're talking to your kids and let's say they start screaming and yelling at you back. It would be a good idea for you to say, look, I really want to continue this conversation and I really want to hear what you have to say. but I can't have this conversation while you're yelling at me. So I'll come back in half an hour and hopefully we'll continue the conversation then. Or another boundary might be, it's not okay for me if you're using pornography in my house. And I love you and I want to support you as much as I possibly can. And there will be consequences if you use pornography in my house. Right? So you're maintaining a boundary and you're communicating that to them. Next, it's really important to learn how to genuinely apologize to your kids. This models a couple of things. It's one, it shows that you can be accountable, that you can own up to your mistakes, that you can voice them, and you can be resilient to your own shame, and learn from your mistakes. It also models and shows that it's okay to make mistakes. Your kids will make mistakes and you'll make mistakes too. And when you sincerely apologize, you're showing them, hey, I messed up, I did something wrong, and I'm sorry. And I want to talk to you openly about that. So you can say things like, when I reacted this way yesterday, really probably wasn't the best way, and I'm sorry. And that says a lot to your kids. It shows them how to do it themselves. Avoid drama when communicating. If somebody is really stuck in a victim stance, woe is me, can't you see how hurt I am, or they get persecutory, they get aggressive in any way, shut the communication down. At that point, you're not communicating. Just stop the communication until everybody can be out of drama. If there's any spitting, hitting, violence, anything like that, you want to stop the communication, hold that boundary, and then come back when everybody has regulated their emotions. And then lastly, respect autonomy. What I mean by that is understand that it is okay for you and your teenager to disagree. You'll probably disagree a lot. And they have a right to their opinion. And it's okay if they disagree with you. You don't have to get them to think the same way as you. In fact, you want to encourage them to think on their own, right? And so instead of forcing them to think a certain way, respect their autonomy. It's much more important that you're understood by them and that you understand them than it is for you to agree on everything. And so respect their autonomy. It's okay that they're individuals. They're learning how to be individuals. Okay. So the first two were teach emotion regulation skills. Secondly, practice effective communication. The next one is external monitoring, providing some monitoring for your children. What I mean by that is some structure, some like filters and rules, things like that. The teenage brain is developing impulse control. So that means it's still in development. They have a ways to go still, and they struggle with impulse control. And as parents, as adults, it's our job to be there for them, to help them not get in trouble and to stay safe as they develop, as their brain develops this impulse control. So, there's a lot more to this than just what I have listed, but I put down some of the biggies, the most important things. One is filters, and it's really important to get a filter on the computer. I talk about impulse control. Sometimes it doesn't even take an impulse for a teenager to have pornography in front of them on a computer. It will find them, and before you know it, they're caught up in it. And so do everything you can if you're going to have media in your home, to have filters to make sure that they're safe as they are on that media. The best filter out there, I think right now, is Net Nanny. That's the one that rates the best. There's also other filters that filter routers, meaning they filter all of the Wi-Fi in the home, so phones, tablets, computers. It's kind of a way to protect everything in the home from one thing. So things like Pandora's Hope or OpenDNS are things that can filter from the router. Dumb phones are actually a smart idea. Smartphones are kind of a dumb idea. Now, I've gone back and forth with parents on this, and the argument that I often get is, well, look, they live in this world now, and everybody has smartphones. So, my teenagers need to learn how to have a smartphone. And the thing is I don't disagree with that. They need to learn how to have a smartphone, but they don't need to have a smartphone in their pocket all the time. And they don't need that responsibility to be able to manage that right now. As they're developing, a dumb phone. When I say a dumb phone, I mean a flip phone or a phone without an internet browser. Um, comes with it some responsibility still, but it doesn't provide the temptation that a smartphone provides. And I mean, think about it. As a teenager, walking around every day with access to pornography right in your pocket, it's not a good idea. And so, teach them how to use a smartphone by the way you use yours, and by them borrowing yours, but don't give them a smartphone. The next thing is media contract. What I mean by that is put in writing the rules and just kind of the structure of how media is going to be consumed in your home, and have them be a part of developing that structure, so that you're on the same page, so that you're aligned with them. Talk to them about some good ideas to stay safe. Talk to them about what sacrifices they can make and why it's important to make those sacrifices. Put it in writing, make it fairly simple and concise, and have everybody in the family sign it. Things like, I will only use the internet for half an hour a day at home if it's not homework, right? Or I won't use the internet after 9 p.m. Whatever structure you want to put, you can put in there, but whatever is going to help keep them safe. So develop and create a media contract, and there are templates and things like that you can get that show what these media contracts are, and I can get you those if you contact me. The last thing is create safe places. You want your home to be safe from pornography. You don't want, I don't know how many parents I've talked to who, where their son found a dirty magazine in the corner, or just stumbled upon something on the internet in a dark corner room. I just bought a new house, and me and my wife were walking around looking at houses, and we'd walk into homes, and if there was a dark, scary room, I'd say to my wife, there's the room where the pornography addiction is created. And I'm kind of joking about that. It's really not that funny, because the reality is don't put your computer in rooms like that. Don't allow iPads and phones in scary places. Keep it all out in the open, and make sure that multiple sets of eyes can be on things at the same time. One of the big problems is anonymity, is kids have access to this stuff on their own, and that's when trouble really happens. So there's a statistic that says 81% of teenagers look at pornography online at home, and 64% of parents do not use online parental controls or filtering software. So you want to establish some structure. You want to set limits, designate some free time for media use, You want your kids to be able to experience social media and the internet. I think it's an important part of the human experience now, but you want to do it in a safe way. You want to talk about the what and the why. And what I mean by that is, don't just say pornography is bad, don't look at it. You want to talk about why it's bad. Um, don't just set limits and structure, but have a dialogue with them, and really try to get on the same team with them as to why and what you're trying to accomplish together. And start when they're young. Start as young as possible, as far as they can comprehend, and it's age appropriate. But start young. It's a lot easier to establish these this structure and this openness at a young age rather than later on in life. So I oftentimes get the question, well, I don't want to start them too young because it might get them curious. Well, the reality is it's not a real question of if they get exposed to pornography, but it's when. And you want to get to them before their friend's phone or the neighbor's TV or something else gets to them and educates them about pornography. So it's true, it could spur some curiosity, but wouldn't you rather have them ask those questions to you rather than kind of explore it on their own, um, on someone's phone or at a friend's house? So let them ask you those questions, and then while that happens, teach them why they need to keep sex in context, and why avoiding pornography is important. Okay, the next thing that's essential for parents is to get educated. It really breaks my heart when good parents sit in my office with their sons and they don't understand what went wrong. Why? How did their son get caught up in this? They're loving, good parents, but they don't understand how how it could happen to him. Well, oftentimes they're uneducated. They're naive to so many things. And luckily, there's a ton of good resources now that parents have opportunity to get educated. So Benjamin Franklin said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. And we're at a point with this problem, pornography, that it is irresponsible for any parent not to get educated about this issue, because our children need us to educate ourselves and understand the dangers of pornography and the effects of addiction. Um, there's a lot of good resources out there, like I said. Dr. Kevin Skinner's come out with good books and resources at addorecovery.com. There's programs for spouses and individuals struggling with addiction. Pornharms.com has a ton of information. Fight the New Drug, Net Nanny, Carnes Group. I could go on and on, and there's a ton of blogs with lists of resources. I do want to say, you want to find information that that really fits with your values. You can find all kinds of different information online. You can find things as far as that tell you pornography is good and helpful for relationships and marriages, and then you can find good information. So just make sure as you do it that it fits within your value system. And there is good information on addiction and recovery out there, but you have to be proactive to find it, and you have to put in some work to study it as well. Another way to get educated is to consult with a professional. I've worked with parents whose oldest sons have gotten into addiction and gotten into some trouble, and they had 3 younger sons. They got educated, they got support, they understood what they needed to do, and their younger children were just fine. And so Addo Recovery, LifeStar, IITAP is Carnes's group. All good resources. But like I said, shop around a little bit to make sure it fits within your value system. But there's good people out there who understand addiction and recovery and understand the dangers of pornography. I would even say, even if your children aren't struggling with addiction, it still wouldn't hurt to talk to a professional. Maybe 1 or 2 sessions. Go sit down and just say, what can I do? And what do I need to know about pornography and addiction? And how can I really set us up for success? I think it's awesome that you're listening to this webinar now and you're getting educated right now. So the last thing is to talk with others and get involved, network. There's a community out there now of good resources, and there's conferences and events and opportunities for everybody. So it helps you realize that you're not alone, helps you realize that you can talk openly about this issue. And so there's the Porn Harm Summit, which is every May, and there's the UCAP conference in Utah every March, and multiple events and things. If you hop online and do a little bit of research, you can find opportunities to get involved. The more involved that you get, the more educated you'll get about it. Okay, lastly, but not leastly in it by any means, is of the power of example. I'd almost say this is the most important thing. It's really, really hard to prevent pornography problems and addiction when mom and dad or both are struggling themselves, and it really undermines the ability for the child to stay away themselves. And there's research that really shows patterns of behaviors get passed down from generation to generation. The best thing you can do for your kids is to get healthy yourselves. Thoreau said, "If you would convince a man that he does wrong, do right. But do not care to convince him. Men will believe what they see. Let them see." So true. So it's important that I talked about emotion regulation earlier. It's important that you model to your kids that it's okay to feel emotions, and that it's possible to work through your emotions and you can regulate them. So if they see every time you're sad or lonely or angry or bored, you drink a Diet Coke or eat a jelly donut, or they can tell you isolate and disappear for a while, you're teaching them that that's how you deal with life. That's how you deal with emotions. So learn how to regulate and cope with your emotions. The other thing that it's really important to model to them is rigorous honesty, shame resiliency, meaning that you're able to talk openly about your mistakes, that you don't lie, that you're authentic, you're not fake, that you're real. When they see you model that, they'll understand that it's not as scary for them to do that. And so practice that yourselves. I know that, I'm a parent of 3, and I know that as I go through this, it could be kind of triggering some guilt trips with everybody. And I just want to say, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. These things are not easy things that I've talked about today. But just focus on one thing at a time and try to improve and get better so that you can be there for your kids. I think modeling, being an example of just putting in some effort and being humble enough to be able to learn and grow and look at what you need to work on is a really helpful thing. So don't model that you got to be perfect and you got to strive for that. Model to them that you can be broken, but you can work through the things, right? Shame resiliency. What I mean by that is, when we feel like we're not enough, we tend to hide or fight back or avoid some realities, go into denial. And shame resiliency makes it possible for you to sit in uncomfortableness, even in some feelings of shame, but be able to take accountability and cope with life. It's also really important that that some sobriety is modeled as well. Like I said earlier, it's really hard to get children to stay away from pornography if mom and dad are using it themselves. So, lastly, show them that you're willing to do what it takes. And what you're doing is you're showing them that you are going to fight for them. You're giving them an example of somebody who's diligent. You're going to make sacrifices. You're going to be you're gonna go the extra mile in order to protect them. And this type of an example will show them that they're loved. And so, like maybe you want to watch your favorite team play basketball or something, but the media contract says, hey, you can't watch it past 10 o'clock at night. Turn it off. Model that to them if that's what the media contract says. Be willing to have open, vulnerable dialogue that's full of honesty. That will show to them that they can do the same. So I just want to wrap up this webinar. I want to tell you thank you for listening and learning together. I hope that you gain some valuable information. And this is an ongoing thing. What I've talked about today are skills that need to be practiced. And so I encourage you to take one thing that you learned today from this webinar and implement it into your life, create a habit, be it effective communication, emotion regulation, example, external monitoring, any one of those to create some safety for your children is very important. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day.